Okay, we're all set.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin. Can you guys hear me? Or not really? Is this going to be loud enough for the candidates? No?
Oh, he was. Yeah. Testing, is this a little better?
All right, yeah.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for being here tonight. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Kevin Mathewson, and I'm the editor of Kenosha County. For those of you who do know me, you know that I don't do suits. I wore suits enough when I was an alderman. I'm no longer an alderman, so this is how I dress. On behalf of my publication, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's Kenosha County Sheriff's Candidate Forum. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize a few special guests and thank the people who have helped make tonight possible. First, I'd like to thank Cheryl McCreary, All-American Mrs. Wisconsin lady, who will be here with us this evening. She's an accomplished recording artist, ambassador, and a longtime supporter of our nation's veterans, first responders, and EMS personnel. She has graciously agreed to perform our national anthem tonight, and we're honored to have her here with us tonight. Please join me in giving Cheryl a warm round of applause and thanking her for helping us in this night.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed, and the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes send bright stars through the perilous skies, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets
thank Valerie Kreshner and Sandy Whitmire for being here tonight. If you don't know them, you will shortly. So Sandy is running for the 11th Senate District, and Valerie is running in the 65th District. So Valerie's taking on incumbent Democrat, and Sandy has a three-way primary as of today. I think they all took in signatures. Next, I'd like to thank our moderator, Brian, for the outro. Can you just stand so we can see who we are? Brian lives in Salem Lake, Padlock Lake area, you know, somewhere out there west of the guys. It's all one place for me. He's been involved in our community for decades, especially west of the eye. No friend, a better man. He's a business owner, a husband, a father, and somebody that genuinely cares about the future of Kenosha County. And I think that's why he's here. If you live in western Kenosha County or visit, chances are you may have seen him flying around in a helicopter. So that's accurate. I'd like to thank you for moderating tonight's forum. I know it's not easy, it's not fun. You probably have things you'd rather be doing tonight, but you came here. I selected Brian, and the candidates agreed to have Brian moderate tonight because it's no secret I have some personal views on this race, and I've published my opinion pretty heavily. So I didn't think it'd be fair if I was asking questions or asking or crafting questions, and so Brian was in charge of all that. I'd also like to thank all candidates who are running and who are participating tonight. Obviously, running for sheriff is not easy. It's demanding on your family, your friends, and having the spotlight on you is not always is fun, and it can be stressful. But I think you're all doing it for the right reason. The ones that are here, I don't know about the others. Their willingness to show up, answer questions, and defend positions, it takes courage. And in the normal Kenosha County eyes standard, they're not all going to be softball questions. There's going to be a couple of tough questions, but I'm sure these two cops who are very intelligent and articulate, they'll be able to answer the tough questions just fine. So I'm not worried about that. For those, like I said before, for those of you who have questions for the candidates, please fill out a sheet in the back by the water and just pull it up, put it on the table, and we'll review those, and if there's time, we'll try to get through as many as we can. Also, to the Stella Hotel and Ballroom, they provided this to the community for free. So, round of applause. Thank you. If you haven't spent time here before, I encourage you to do so. Stop in for a meal, check out the 1844 tables and mash. That food is awesome. They have a soup and salad buffet during lunch. Terry Rosemary, it's good and it's cheap, so that's my thing that I do. I'm in there so often, I'm embarrassed because I've made friends there. Also, their hotel here is beautiful. And tip your bartenders too. I'd also like to thank Rose and Rose attorneys, Terry and Chris, for supplying wonderful hors d'oeuvres. Thank you, Terry. Terry served our community for like, what, 40 years or something? How many years? 38. Close enough. As a county board supervisor, he's always had a passion for bettering our community. And finally, thank you to each and every one of you who are here to support a candidate or just here to see what the candidates have to offer. An informed electorate is essential to a healthy community, and your presence here tonight is a good thing for Kenosha County. So we got standing room only. There's some spots up front if anybody wants to sit down. So right now I'm going to invite up Valerie Kreshner. She's going to offer a few brief remarks.
All right, Valerie.
Thank you for the introduction, Kevin. So my name is Valerie Kretschmer. I'm running for 65th District State Assembly. I'm a mom of two beautiful daughters. My oldest has a disability, and she's a student at KUSD. And I'm also the mother to energetic 6-year-old who we actually fostered. We fostered 3 other babies besides her, and we were blessed enough to adopt her. So I have a 10-year gap between my 2 girls, but they're kind of the reason why I'm running. They are one of the biggest reasons I'm running. So I'm fighting for safer communities, which I know is important for the 65th District from the discussions that I've been having. I think partnering with our local law enforcement in tackling the drug issues that we have within the schools is a big problem. And then also working with them to educate our youth on the dangers of drug use and keeping our classrooms safe. The other things I'm advocating for are lower taxes. I'm sure you have all felt the pain of the 400-year tax increase. My taxes went up $600, and the average age to buy a home is in your 40s currently. And I know me and my husband first purchased our home, we were in our late 20s. So I think we need to work with city officials and bring the voices of the community to the Capitol to help lower those taxes. Also advocating for disability rights. Obviously, I have an interest in that because of my daughter. I'm on the Pleasant Prairie Parks Commission currently, so I work with them on their 5-year parks plan to make sure that all our parks moving forward for the next 5 years are accessible and inclusive for people with disabilities. So if you're familiar with the Rockplex and the new Prairie Springs Park, which is by the fire station, I helped design that with our parks director. Also, education reform is a huge one for me. I actually ran for KOC school board last year, did not make it on, but I'm here running for state assembly, so education reform is super important to me. We have a bloated administration. There's no accountability or transparency from the district, and I think we need more resources in the classroom than we did do at that district office. They are also not meeting the IEPs of our students with disabilities. I know from experience because of my daughter. I actually pulled her out of KOC after it did not win because there were so many issues there. Just throwing more money at it is not really the answer. We need more accountability in the school district. So that is why I'm running. I want to be the voice of the 65th District. It's not about the politics. It's about the voice of our community and bringing that to the Capitol. Thank you.
That's good.
All right, thank you very much. And then, Sandy, would you come up here and give a few remarks, please?
Sandy!
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to say thank you for inviting us out and giving us a platform to speak tonight. I really appreciate it. So as Kevin said, I'm running for State Senate, District 11, I'm Sandy Wetmeyer. So for those of you that are not familiar with the district, it is southern Pleasant Prairie, so it cuts off just north of the Rockplex. So it's the southern portion of Pleasant Prairie from the lake over, running to the interstate, and then all west of the Kenosha County, west of the Racine County, Walmart County, and a little chunk of rock. So it's a super huge district. Senator Ross is retiring, so it is an open seat. So I decided to jump into this race. A little bit about myself. So I'm a former school teacher in my previous life. I've taught at the middle school level, elementary, and post-secondary levels. I stayed at home with my kids for a short little while because that was important to me to be home during their early years as they were developing. I own a small business, and I currently work, you mentioned the facility, at a municipal rec center, the largest municipal rec center in the U.S., where I help to manage a $13 million balanced budget, which is important with government. We also drive a lot of tours of the area, and I work with over 13,000 members on a daily basis to help understand and meet their needs. Like a lot of other people in this room that I recognize that I've known for a few years, I got started in politics. I never thought I would run for office, first of all. My dear friend Amanda, the representative, Amanda in the back, approached me about running, and I swore I would never ever run for political office. I never thought I'd run, I never thought I'd get involved in politics, but this thing called COVID happened. And I met these lovely ladies, and we were all pretty ticked off at what was going on in our schools. We didn't like the government overreach, we didn't like the schools were shut down. So we decided to do something about it. We wanted to be a voice for children in our community. So together, we started with, there was 5 of us, started the first chapter of Moms for Liberty in the state of Wisconsin, and we worked to advocate for children and for parents and for families. Shortly thereafter, I was asked to step up and serve as the chairwoman of the Republican Party of Kenosha County. As a volunteer position, I've been doing that for the last 4 years. Under my leadership of a great team, and several of them are here this evening, we have really built up the party infrastructure. For the first time ever, we have a permanent headquarters just over off of Green Bay Road. Before we would come and go with elections, which isn't the best look for the community, so that was one of my goals, to make sure we had a hub for like-minded people to gather and congregate. So we got that done. And in this last election year, presidential election year, we got the largest Republican presidential vote shares for Kenosha County since 1972. So we're doing really good things for our community. I enjoy being a public servant. I've learned over the last few years that it's important to do something that's bigger than yourself and to give back to your community. So that's part of why I decided to step up. This is a way for me to serve in a bigger way. I've already talked to some of the board members about what's that next thing, because the leader always knows when it's time to pass the baton, and I always start to look at it, is there someone else that wants to step up that can maybe breathe some new life into the party and help continue the mission. And this gives me an opportunity to still be involved, just be great for the community. So obviously I'm not a career politician. I don't see things through a Madison lens. I think that's what we need more in Madison, are people that have experience in the community and can bring that experience and the know-how of their community to the state capitol. So I jumped in this race so that I could hopefully go represent you and just do common sense things. Like I said, the overreach was kind of the deal breaker for me, like it was for a lot of people in this room. If we have a line of questions, and I'll give you a little more information about me and the story behind it as we go through the questions that Brian asked for us. But thank you for the opportunity to address you.
So we're going to have a few questions here that we're going to offer these ladies tonight. And I'd like to start with Sandy Widmeyer. And first question. The first question.
Probably the batteries. You're going bad. Batteries.
Bueno.
I've got that.
There you go. Oh, yay.
Maybe your voice was just too deep for. Testing.
Oh.
You know what? I brought back up once just in case.
Might have to stand up maybe.
No, I
Get
got.
a connection.
It's a little loud.
Check yours, make sure yours works.
Yours are.
Test, test.
Oh, boy.
Valerie just cut down.
Is it on?
It's not Valerie.
Is the left one on?
He's pushed it on the side or the bottom.
Test. Okay. Here, use this one.
You might, no.
Testing.
Oh, there you go, Valerie.
Does that work or no? Let me keep going.
That's bad, right?
That's it. All right, back to the questions. So Sandy, the first question that I have for you is, what issues or concerns are you hearing about most often when you talk to voters? And how would you address it if you were elected?
It's an easy one, cost of living. I think everybody can agree right now that this isn't really stretching as far as what we like it to, but is that not the words I'm hearing that a lot from families that they're feeling the stress on their pocketbooks, the cost of property taxes going up, groceries, gas, just general essentials. They're being pinched and they're wanting a little relief. They don't want to see games being played in Madison. They just want to see work being done. Common sense legislation, give a little bit of relief. Kind of like the budget surplus bill that was just on the floor of the Senate and the Assembly just 2 weeks ago. So what I would do is, I would address that, I would work across the aisle and make sure that we got some of that $2.3 billion surplus in the pockets of the sons and taxpayers, where it's really needed the most to give some relief to our families in the state, who are really the pinch of the economy right now. That's probably the biggest thing that I'm hearing. I think they're tired of some of the political theater that we see in Madison. They just want work done. That's why I jumped in the race. I just want to go do common sense things for the people of Wisconsin. It's really the state legislature's job to find solutions to problems and make life a little bit better people for the state that they serve. So they just want to see more of that.
Okay, great. Valerie, would you like me to repeat the question or?
No.
Okay, great.
So actually, the taxes are definitely important. But actually, the biggest issue that came up in my district was community safety. So I know there's concerns with crime in the area, and especially in schools. We just had safer entrances, they put in metal detectors at the schools. But one of the issues that I found out was that the metal detectors actually have the ability to detect vapes. We know drugs are a problem in school. So I was talking with KPD and I found out that the school isn't turning on the setting for vapes. It's a sensitivity setting. So it doesn't cost any extra, they just don't turn it on. And their excuse was that it was going to create bottlenecks in the school. So when I brought this up to KPD, they mentioned that the escalators are collecting about box of vapes a day. So the way I see it is that a problem then becomes KPD's problem because the students then grow up and they get into different drugs and more crime. So I would like to work with the police, and I know we had DARE, it's not talked about as much, but I think it needs to come back to the schools. We need to educate our youth on the danger of using drugs in the schools. We need to turn the settings up so they're not bringing it in. It might cost a lot less in the beginning, but eventually they're not going to bring it in. And just partnering with them to educate the youth and get out there in the community and just keeping the community safe and working with our police.
Great. All right, so the second question, I'm going to start with you, Valerie. If elected, what would be your top legislative priority during your first year in office?
For me, it's education. Obviously, running for school board, I learned a lot about what's going on in KUSD. I touched my daughter been in that district for about 12 years. She started when she was 3 and Head Start. And with a disability, it was very challenging working with the schools or fighting for her disability rights, which is, it's federal law. So, education reform, our scores are terrible in the school district. If you look at Zillow, schools are not rated well. So we want to bring families here, young families here. And if you look at schools, a lot of people are going to have to choose the private school option, which I am all for choice. I moved my daughter out to University of her private school. She's doing excellent. But we need to focus our resources on a classroom. I think it was great that we had education funding built into the surplus bill. We needed more special education funding. I think it was going to be funded at 50%, and it's not funded that way now. It was obviously shut down, but there also needs to be accountability in how our administration spends that money. Right now, we have voted administration and not enough resources in the classroom, and we need more discipline in the classroom.
Okay. How about you, Sandy?
I'm going to have to be free, and I apologize for that. One of them was just mentioned the cost of living. I think we need some immediate relief. So we need to figure out what we're doing with that $2.3 billion surplus in the budget, make sure we're getting some of that money back to, the people that are working hard and just trying to make a living. So I think that's gotta be a priority. We wanna make sure that that is used wisely and, fairly for taxpayers. And then I'm with Valerie in education, like being a previous school teacher and having raised both of my children through the public school system and the UW system. We're backwards in education. Compared nationally, we look at national standards, only 30% of our fourth graders are proficient in reading, and that's just not acceptable. So we keep putting money into a failing system without accountability. So we need accountability measures if we're going to put more money into the system. We've got declining enrollment while staffing levels continue to rise, but we're asking taxpayers for more money with referendums. So we really need to deep dive into our schools as to how money is being spent, how we can be more efficient, and then how we can better educate our students. We don't run our households like that. We don't run private business like that. It can't be so backwards where we keep putting the burden on the taxpayer. So I'm with you on the education piece 100%. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention healthcare, so patient rights. My mom was in the hospital 4 months with COVID. She was vented, she was trached. And I sat and watched, she did survive it, but I sat and watched as other family members didn't have the same outcome as my family. And you had one family member on one side of the class, and one was a 19-year-old kid on the other side of the class, and their parents weren't allowed to be there as the son was passing. They had to watch from the other side of the class. Wouldn't let the pastor in. It was just a horrendous thing to witness. So I did a little bit of research, and I said, okay, what are they doing in red states? Like, what are they doing in states where, a little different landscape than what we have in Wisconsin? So I did a little bit of research, and I found that states were starting to take action already during that time, passing legislation to protect patient rights during pandemics so that they're not isolated. As long as the appropriate precautions are taken, they cannot be left alone. They deserve to have someone there to advocate for them. So I reached out to my dear friend, Representative Ned West, and she pointed me in the right direction. I worked with Representative Wickers to champion that bill. It did get through the Assembly and the Senate this past session. I went to Madison and I testified on behalf of that bill. Unfortunately, the governor would not sign it into law. And to me, that's the job of the state legislature, is to look for problems in our state and what can we do to make life better. Like what are the pains for the people in the state and what can we do to relieve those pains? Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the job done this time. I would certainly keep pushing for that because I have personal feelings about that, and I'll tell you, as an officer and I talk to people, there's so many people that have similar stories that were affected. I got the number of a lady out in, I think she went out in Bristol this past week, and she said that she was a nurse and her husband was in the hospital and she wasn't allowed to be with him because it wasn't allowed at that time. And they wanted to vent him, and she refused to give approval for him to be vented. And my mom reacted, she just wasn't going to make it, but she said she refused for her husband to be vented. That was on a Tuesday. He walked out of the hospital on a Thursday. So, it was just an egregious time. And I'm not saying an individual tried to do something to her husband. It was just an egregious time where we were making rash decisions and pushing out mandates that weren't necessary, that really had negative effects on our children, our friends, our communities, our businesses. So it's our job to protect you guys. That's why I'm running.
Great. Valerie, this question, I'll start with you. What is one thing Wisconsin state government is doing well? And what is one thing that needs real improvement?
So the one thing I think that the government is doing well is we've been in surplus since I've been here for 15 years. So it's not as much as it used to be, but we still are in surplus. So I think bringing in the new businesses that we have, and we're not running at a deficit like our neighboring states are. So that's the one thing I think we're doing very well. I think it can be improved with tax cuts, obviously, and in turn bringing more business to the state. So some of the things that I'd like to improve, I'm hearing from a lot of the people, like you said, that they don't feel connected to politics or the politicians that are out there. They don't feel they're being heard. They don't feel like they have a voice in the Capitol. So I'm going to make a commitment as a state assembly representative to be out in the community, volunteering, and being where the people are. I think that's the most important, the conversations that we have in the community. You know, town halls are great, but getting out there and volunteering, really get to know people. I've been volunteering in this community for a long time. I plan to continue that and serving the community and being a voice for the people.
Great. How about you, Sandy? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I kind of, I'll down that a little bit because I agree with all of them, but as far as for what I would say, doing well, I think that there's some common sense legislation that we've seen in this last session, and I don't think we always hear about what's being done in the Capitol. We're just kind of unaware, again, totally the same thing, you know, we just we're unaware, until we're not. But, you know, they've done some really good work, and I said, we don't always see it. We had, there's legislation regarding cell phone use in the classrooms, to limit use of cell phone use. I think that's a positive thing. It allows teachers to do what they need to do, teach without children on their devices. It's such a big distractor, and it's a big indicator, not the sole, like some studies say. I think there are other issues in our education system, but I think it is a big issue in the classrooms, and it does correlate with declining test scores. So that was passed. Again, we had Gale's Law, which was the bill that requires insurance companies to cover the testing necessary for women with breast tissue to detect cancer early, and it really is a cost-saving measure because it saves down the long run if you can catch cancer early. And tests as they were not able to catch it, women didn't want to pay out of pocket for it. So I think that's great for women that was passed in our state capitol this last session. Thank you very much, Representative. As well as our anti-grooming law. It goes right along with my mom's Liberty roots. It is now a felony in the state of Wisconsin if you groom a child for sexual activity. So I think that's fabulous improvement. So there are a lot of really good things going on in our state capitol. We just don't always hear about it. As far as improvement, I would say we don't always hear about it. We're not always aware of what's going on. But I would say we're not always aware of the bad things that are being blocked either. So our representatives, it's important to keep that majority because not only are they voting for common sense legislation for us, they're also blocking bad measures. And we don't hear about some of the things that don't get passed the Senate and the Assembly, such as, sorry, I'm blanking on the two people, ranked voting was one of them. That was just up this last session. That's one of the things that they blocked. None of us are a fan of ranked voting. It would be very one-sided. They were able to block that. There's also a measure that would allow local municipalities to put mandates on minimum wage. How chaotic would that be to our economy? That was blocked. So there are things that they block that we don't always know about. So it's hard to know the work that they're doing in Madison and how important it is and affects us if we're not getting that message. So that's something that just like Valerie said, that I would commit to doing is staying in contact with my constituents, making sure that our community, both what we're doing and what we're not allowing to happen in Madison. I think that it's important for people to know that, hey, if we don't win some of these elections, these are the things coming down the pipeline, and you only know that if you know what's being pushed down the pipeline.
Okay, great.
It's a long night.
There we go. So Sandy, I'm going to give this question to you first. Many people have become frustrated with politics. What would you say to the voter that feel that voices are no longer heard in Madison?
I hear you. I mean, that's why I got involved. I mean, that's why I reached out to these other lovely, strong ladies that started that chapter of Moms for Liberty, because I thought if I'm not part of the solution, I'm part of the problem. And, fortunately for me, I was at a stage in my life where I was able to do that. I was able to make a difference and volunteer and try to educate other parents. I say, have a voice wherever you can, in communication with your elected officials. Be aware of what's going on. I mean, everything from school boards, knowing what they're voting on in the schools, whether or not they've got a referendum coming down the pipeline, knowing which local municipalities are doing, pay attention. Because they send that information out, and if you're not watching, next thing you know, you've got a room full of people that are really mad because there's a battery storage center coming to your area. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that, with battery storage, but if people are upset because we didn't know, pay attention to all levels of government so that you can hold all of your elected officials accountable, because that's what we're here for. Elected officials are here to represent the community, so if you're not paying attention, it's hard to have an opinion. So I think a lot of us will, I'm looking around the room, and a lot of my friends that I know are active at the exact same time as me. It woke a lot of people up, so I say just get involved and pay attention.
Okay, great. Valerie, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, Sandy kind of said it before, the people are frustrated, they don't feel like they're being heard. I think we get stuck in partisan politics too much, and a lot of politicians will just vote down the line, whatever party it is. I think we need to represent people better and make sure that you're telling your voice. So it may not always be what the party wants. So partisan politics has gotten in the way of a lot of good things and a lot of lots of good things. So I think we really just need to get out in the communities, listen to our constituents, listen to what taxpayers want, what families want. We want to build a united community, not just one-sided. That's the beauty of our community. We have a little flavor in politics, and I think we just get stuck in that too much. So that's what I'm worried.
Okay, great. So I got one final question, then I'll start with you, Valerie. Looking ahead to Election Day, what is the most important reason voters should vote for you?
Voters should vote for me if they want change. So, like Sandy, I'm not a politician. I actually approached Sandy about a year and a half ago about running for state assembly. At that time, somebody else was running, and I asked her if we needed help, and she said school board. So that's where I started. I'm a mom. I have a business background, and I worked with a lot of school districts, a lot of government businesses in budgeting. So I have that budgeting experience. I'm a mom, so I get families, and I'm a taxpayer in this district for over 15 years. I felt the pain of our costs going up and trying to afford groceries and gas and everything else, and our kids' sports and everything that comes with being in a family. So I think voters should, if they want change, vote for me, and I will be a voice for the 65th district and the community and bring their voices to the Capitol.
And Sandy?
One of you. Just like you, I've built my life and my career in the community. I'm not a politician. I don't see things through a Madison lens. I've been a school teacher. I've raised my kids in this community. I own a small business. I work in local government. I've been volunteering for the last 6 years in an effort to make life better for the people that live in Kenosha when I had nothing to gain. Like I said, I never planned to do any of this. I just felt moved to do it. I'm running for a cause, and it's plain and simple. I'm just running because I feel like I'm fed up with career politicians. People trying to work their way up the ladder in Madison. I've got a career. I don't need to go to Madison. I feel that we need people in Madison that don't have to be there, that are doing it for the right reasons, that are doing it because they want to do good things for the people in the community. That's what I've been doing for the last 6 years, is working hard for everybody in this room and more. Hopefully you'll allow me to continue to serve. One thing I say to people is I'll always be transparent. We may not always agree. We know that, even in managing the party, we're not all alike thinkers. But I bet we can agree at least 80% of the time. If we can agree 80% of the time, we'll be friends. So one thing always is you'll get transparency from me. You'll get life experience from me, and you'll get a commitment to always aim to make life better for every single person in the state.
Great, thanks. So what I'd like to say, I don't have any other questions, but I think it's great that both you ladies came here. It's important that the public hears you. We have a lot of politicians that don't necessarily do that. And it's very important for people to be heard and know your position so that we can feel confident the day that we go to vote that we know who we're voting for. So thank you so much. A round of applause. the Kenosha County Sheriff's Republican primary debate. And I'd like to thank Kevin for hosting this by Kenosha County Eye. Tonight, unfortunately, one of the candidates did not show. We tried our very best to get him here. Unfortunately, he declined to participate, and which is disappointing, but we will move forward with the other two candidates that chose to be here, which is Captain James Feller and Captain Tony Gonzalez. So before we get going tonight, I think I want to make a special thank you to Kevin Matheson of Kenosha County Eye.
Yeah.
Kevin has spent many years providing the public with consistent, detailed, and often difficult reporting on local government, law enforcement, and public accountability. Whether people agree with every article or not, his commitment to transparency, open information has given residents access to stories and facts that otherwise you would not have. We do not have a lot of journalism anymore in Kenosha County, and we should be very thankful that Kevin provides that service. So I'd like to thank him for putting this together. The more informed we are as voters, the better off we are. And again, I'd like to thank Stella for hosting this. This is a great room, and I think that it's an amazing venue, and I think in the future that we should offer participation in with their business. So we also need to thank Rose and Rose Law, Terry and Chris offered theirs tonight, and that is fantastic. We appreciate that. So before we go, we're going to have some basic ground rules, and these ground rules are pretty basic. I'm not going to be hard line if somebody goes over a little bit on time, but if things become repetitive, I might ask them to move on, just because for time reasons. So we're going to let each candidate give an opening statement for about a minute and a half, and then each answer for each question that I ask, we're hoping to keep it around 60 seconds. If it goes on a little bit longer and it's got substance behind it, we're going to continue to collect the answer. Any rebuttals will be 30 seconds. Please, no interruptions by the candidates or the audience. And at the end of the day, we're all here and we're fighting for the same cause. We're all Republicans in here. And we're on the same team, and we're just trying to find the best person for the job. So with that, we will start our debate.
All right, Captain James Feller, Captain Tony Gonzalez. Once it's called a flip. You're gonna call it, Tony? It's heads. You wanna go first, or gonna go first?
I'll go first. We'll have you do it up here.
Hey, good evening. Thank you all for being here. Public safety is important to all of us, and it touches every community in Kenosha County, every neighborhood, every street. My name is James Feller, and if you haven't seen my face plastered across Kenosha County, it's nice to meet you tonight. I grew up in Paddock Lake, attended local schools. I was the son of a single mother. She was disabled. We didn't have money for college, so I thought, well, how am I going to do for college? I went off to the Army to serve my country and also get the luxury of joining or attending college. After college, I came right back here to Kenosha County, the community I love. Attended college. I was able to volunteer for Salem Rescue because I had college paid for it. Once college was over, I moved on to a 4-year degree, and I got hired by the Sheriff's Department. I worked undercover drugs for almost 3 years. Simultaneously, I worked as a Kenosha County 911 dispatcher. And And then I took the first job that came along, which was with the City of Kenosha Police Department. I've been there 26 years. I've been through every position, just about every rank, and I've served in every division and supervised there. I currently am a captain in the Detective Bureau. I have approximately 60 employees that I supervise, and several supervisors across several disciplines. While there, I've created, with a group of people, several programs that have led to organizational success. As a captain of administration, we created a community engagement team, which would cops out in the community and allow them to interact with the public on a non-enforcement basis. When I took over the Detective Bureau in 2024, I recognized a gap in solving child predator crimes. Therefore, I found a solution working with those that were working the cases, and we created an Internet Crimes Against Children unit. Its first full year, 2025, it made Unit of the Year in the state of Wisconsin. Those successes I hope to bring to the Sheriff's Department, that energy and also that teamwork. Tonight you're going to hear a lot about experience, but experience alone isn't enough. We're looking for the next leader of the Kenosha Sheriff's Office, and I believe I'm that person. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Gonzalez. Thank you so much for being here tonight. There's a lot of other things you could be doing today, but to show your support here today, it reflects how much this race is important to you as much as it is for us. I was born in Guatemala City, that's south in Latin America, and my parents immigrated into this great nation when I was a child. I know exactly what it is to work hard, succeed, and I also know how to appreciate the achievement of the American dream. Although I was born in Guatemala, the United States is my home. This is a home that I have various times taken an oath of support and defense of death, if so be it. As an immigrant, I know a lot of the challenges that people that immigrate to this country face, and I know the reasons why a lot of people flee from other nations. I grew up in the south side of Chicago Gage Park neighborhood. If you do your research, it's probably not one of the best neighborhoods in the city. Doing so to escape some of those challenges, what I decided to do was to continue serving my country, and I enlisted in the United States Navy as a hospital corpsman. I served for 8 years on active duty alongside not just my fellow sailors, but my fellow Marines, whom I love very much. Upon separating from service in 2005, I felt like I was missing something and I needed purpose. Although I didn't grow up wanting to step into the law enforcement field, a lot of people reached out and said, you should consider becoming a law enforcement officer. You have the characteristics and traits that we need for our community. And so I decided to embark on that journey. And 18 years later, after serving with the Kenosha County Sheriff's Office, here I am today. First and foremost, thankful to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who's carried me every single step of the way. I'd like to make one thing clear. Yes, I'm a Republican. But before that, I'm a Christian. And everything that I do, especially in the last 10 years of my life, everything that I decided to do and the decisions that I make are based on that moral compass. And it's very important for me to not just give God all the glory here tonight, but that you realize that that is the driving force behind all the decisions that I make. I hope that tonight I'm able to answer the questions and that you are able to understand my views and opinions. And I will say this up front right now. I'm not here to change my stances on what I believe in. If it is your opinion that I should change my stance to something that reflects with what you believe, please don't. I don't need your vote. On that point, thank you so much for being here today. Let's go.
All right, we're gonna start tonight with jail staffing and morale. So my first question is going to be to Captain Beller. The jail is facing severe staffing shortages, mandatory overtime, burnout, and turnover. You spent your career in municipal policing, not corrections. What specific leadership strategies, operational changes, and cultural reforms would you implement to stabilize the jail? And what is the first measurable improvement that we would expect to see from you being elected?
Thank you for the question. And this has come up quite often along the campaign. You know, the jail does have issues, and it just didn't happen in 4 years, 8 years, or 10 years. It's been a long-standing issue that I've been aware of as long as I've been a police officer. Whether it's getting into jail with prisoners, or, you know, I hear guys and girls talking about forced overtime. So it's not a corrections issue. I think it's a leadership issue. And the leadership issue comes from the very top, and understanding what's happening within the jail and looking for solutions to correct the downfall, the high turnover of staff. You know, I've led teams in the police department through 2020 civil unrest. We had high turnover through those years and COVID. We had low morale and we had low satisfaction. But it's when employees believe that you believe in them and you listen. You seek them out, you sit down with them, and you find solutions to the problems. Who better to ask than those that are facing those problems every single day? In 2024, I took over the Detective Bureau, and there was low morale, and people were concerned about work hours, and they couldn't get a weekend off. We looked at scheduling, and we changed schedules, and allowed those that wanted to work a 5-2 schedule. And they didn't have to work Monday through Friday, they could work Sunday through Thursday, Tuesday through Saturday. We still had calls covered, investigations covered, but what it did was it increased morale extensively, and it lowered overtime by 55%. In the jail, I'll see success, and when we have lower turnover, and we have employees talking about staying rather than leaving. But you're not going to fix the problem by just ignoring it, or staying in your office, or not even coming to work. You have to be present, you have to be in the jail, and you have to listen to those that are facing those problems.
Great. So, Captain Gonzalez, employees have described the sheriff's office as a sinking ship, citing favoritism, inconsistent discipline, and a disconnect between administration and staff. What concrete steps would you take in your first 30 days to restore credibility, rebuild trust, and demonstrate that leadership? We're going to try this again.
You guys just share that.
All right, I'm going to start over. So, Captain Gonzalez, employees have described the sheriff's office as a sinking ship, citing favoritism, inconsistent discipline, and a disconnect between administrative staff. What concrete steps would you take in the first 30 days to restore credibility, rebuild trust, and demonstrate that leadership is changing?
Thank you for the question. I think one of the first steps that needs to happen immediately is to establish a new, clear line of communication with the staff at every single level. That sinking ship analogy is something that even I've similarly used. I use more of the ships going to run aground. And I believe that one of the things that has to happen immediately is to turn that ship around before it does. I can tell you that based on the level of support that's come out, overwhelmingly, I don't think I actually believe that the staff have full confidence that I'm going to be able to execute that. It's actually nothing new. It's a process that I used before in the past, depending on what areas I was working with. And I used the jail as a perfect example of that. When I was working at the KCDC, one of the first things that I did was start establishing that line of communication at every level. I know that supervision has their concerns, and I also understand that boots on the ground have their concerns as well. And sometimes those two don't necessarily meet in the middle. And therefore, it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm paying attention, that I'm an active leader, not sit behind a desk, behind a closed door, but that I'm actually actively engaged with every single staff member at every level and listen to what their concerns are. I might not have the answer or the responses to what they need right there and then, but I know that I can formulate a plan from that point and then try to execute it as best as possible. Thank you.
Great, thank you. This question is for Captain Beller. Employees have raised concern about inconsistent discipline and unclear expectations. What specific systems, oversight, and mechanics or policy changes will you implement to ensure fairness, transparency, and consistency in discipline across the ranks?
Thank you. I believe the biggest morale killer is inconsistent discipline. When employees mess up, they understand that there's going to be discipline, and when it's not, then they continue. They know that they'll be able to get away with continuing to violate policy. So having clear discipline, equal among all, and they all know they mess up, is probably the first thing that we're going to accomplish. Setting clear expectations through supervision, but also through staff. Reviewing policy to see if there needs to be policy changes, and working with command staff to affect those changes. When clear expectations are put in place, there's following. So I had an incident where an officer messed up, and I spoke with him, and it was an active officer, and I asked him, or told him he was being forwarded for discipline, and he said, "No, sir, I know. We know when we mess up, and we expect to be disciplined, especially by you. You need to hold people accountable, and that starts at the very top. Nobody's perfect, everybody's human, but if we make a mistake, we acknowledge it, and we're transparent about it. We let those in command know, hey, I messed up, and I'm going to take a beat for it. But we also apply the same rules to everybody across the board. There's no favoritism, there's no in-groups and out-groups. Everybody has one standard, one set layer of expectations, and by doing that, you're going to increase morale and accountability."
Great. This question is from Captain Gonzalez. You spent your entire career inside the sheriff's office. What internal culture blind spots or institutional habits do you believe exist? And how would you overcome them to lead the agency objectively and effectively?
Well, being an internal candidate, I think, plays a huge advantage for me. As far as the cultural blind spots and having been able to go up every single rank and work in almost every single area of the agency gives me quite the advantage to have an understanding of what some of the challenges are. Some of the shared frustrations with leadership decisions, believe it or not, it actually affects me as well. And I'm third in command, so that should tell you something. At third in command, if I'm having frustrations, that tells you that there's definitely a significant breakdown even above me. Sharing those frustrations with my colleagues and the people that believe, I think gives me an advantage that allows me to implement certain changes to facilitate resolving some of the issues that we deal with. As far as being fair, objective, and firm, that's something that as a command staff we strive to do every single moment. When it comes to discipline, we weigh out many different elements that play a role in discipline. I always like to look at and think of mistakes of the mind and mistakes of the heart. Every time that you see a difference, you're able to analyze if someone deserves a little bit of grace and mercy, or if they deserve to face some significant punishment. I can tell you that some of my frustrations, especially as the person who oversees a lot of the disciplinary processes, is when you recommend discipline and that discipline is undermined and changed and amended. So from day one, I can tell you that that will not happen unless we identify a significant issue that needs to be corrected. Thank you.
Great. Captain Bauer, many employees say communication from leadership is broken down. What is your plan to rebuild communication channels, ensure frontline staff feels heard, and create a culture where concerns are addressed rather than ignored?
The communication issues aren't because people aren't talking. Communication issues are because people aren't listening at the supervisory level all the way to the top. The best way to handle that is to get out there and meet with people and listen to people. Starting on day one, I'll move throughout the department, every division, every shift, and I'll listen to people. I'll ask where we can improve, because again, the best solutions are those that are facing the problem. I'll spend time with command staff, listening to their choices or their improvements, and what has been done in the past, and how we plan to move forward. There's a big division right now in the office, and the way to solve it is to bring back trust and accountability. In addition to spending time on the road and in the building, I plan to spend time throughout the jail, and again, listening to folks within the jail, because it's an entire organization that needs to be improved and the trust needs to be rebuilt. And the main thing that I can tell you is that people like to be heard. They don't always expect the answer to be yes, but they do expect to be heard and to feel valued. And then once we rebuild that trust, we can start getting subject matter experts on certain things. It works in the city, it can certainly work in the county. And those individuals that feel valued will stay on long after I'm gone. Thank you.
Great. Captain Gonzalez, deputies express frustration with leadership decisions they feel are arbitrary or politically motivated. What structural reforms would you implement to ensure decisions are based on policy, fairness, operational need, rather than personal preference?
I think it all stems back to just being an active leader who is proactively engaging with staff, supervisors at all levels. One of the things I used to do was have listening sessions with my staff at the KCDC. I've also had listening sessions, more one-on-one, the current role that I'm at in the Administrative Services Division. For patrol operations, when I was assigned to operations, I had listening sessions when the opportunity would arise with our patrol shifts, and definitely at the supervisory level. And even to go beyond that, I'd like to point out that there's also a lot of support staff that require the same attention. It's not just professional staff, it's not just our sworn deputies, it's also support staff. We have staff members that are taking on a lot of big responsibilities, and whether they're contracted individuals or individuals that are playing a specific role, they're no less important than everybody else. So bringing that type of equality at a level is something that I would bring, and I've already done before, and I would continue to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So what we're going to do now is I got some questions that both of you are going to answer and individually. So this particular one, I'm going to start with Captain Bauer. Kenosha County's work release program and electronic monitoring systems are intended to reduce jail overcrowding, support employment, and lower cost taxpayers. However, concerns have been raised about eligibility decisions, supervision levels, and whether the programs are being used effectively. As the sheriff, what changes, if any, would you make to work release or electronic monitoring to improve public safety, accountability, and successful reentry?
Work release is a privilege, it's not a right. And we have to make sure that we're allowing the right people to do that. That'll do some work on the back end with staff to make sure those that apply are able to be re-entered in the community and they're not a threat to public safety. My number one job as sheriff is to make sure we're not putting offenders back out in the community. that are going to commit further crime or put the community in danger. There needs to be clear rules and expectations, and the jail detention captain needs to make sure that those are followed. By allowing people the privilege to be out, you do save money, but we can't put the community at risk. So those that are allowed to be out will follow the rules, there will be clear expectations, and when there's a violation of the work release rules, there will be consequences. And by holding those offenders accountable, others will see that work release isn't a free pass, that it is a privilege. We may see a reduction in people applying because they know that they will be able to stay out of trouble. But again, back to clear expectations and communication with staff and the inmates that are being released is top priority. And how will we measure? We'll measure by knowing that those inmates that are on work release are not being offended. And if they are, then we'll cut back work release to a point that you must be specially privileged or able to just be out in the community, very low level crimes. And certainly we're not going to allow those that are child predators or those that are on drunk driving, which would put the community at risk. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Captain Gonzalez, I can repeat the question, if you like.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
I think there are benefits when you have certain programs in place. I think one of the important things to do is to identify that the programs that are in place are working effectively. And there should be, like anything else, any other type of program that exists, I think there needs to be a continuous, or at least a set expectation as far as the reassessing of the functionality as well as the effectiveness of some of these programs. I think to just flat out put something out is not necessarily wise. I think it's just a matter of making sure that there is a communication line with the agencies or the individuals that help to run some of these programs. It's making sure that we are in communication, setting expectations on both ends, because it's not a one-way street. It impacts also the people that are trying to do their job and their work in reducing some of the issues that sometimes would come with whether it's overcrowding or housing too many inmates in our jail settings. Again, I think in doing so, it's not just making sure that the programs are effective, but from a fiscal standpoint, that they are also feasible for the agency as well as the taxpayer. That's something that has to be taken into consideration. To have a program just for the sake of having a program, even if it is an effective program, but if it's going to cost a lot of money, it makes no sense to run. So I think as a sheriff, that's something that I would involve myself in, as well as the rest of my command staff that would be helping to oversee some of these programs as well. And finally, with the rest of the judicial system, that also has a say-so in how these folks are not charged, but are punished is not the right word. Sentenced, thank you very much. That's what I was So that's my response. Thank you.
Good, thanks. So we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to go to a section of rural communities versus city policing. So I'm going to start with Captain Bella. You spent your career in a city of approximately 100,000 residents. Rural communities like Bristol, Salem, Lakes, Randall, Brighton have different expectations of law enforcement. What specific adjustments to patrol strategy, community engagement, and resource allocation would you make to serve rural residents effectively?
I laugh when this constantly comes up that I'm the big city cop looking to move to the sheriff's department. And I think people don't understand that I grew up in Paddock Lake. I'm from western Kenosha County. I understand rural roads just like I understand city streets. But when it comes to providing a service to the community, the city's no different than the county. Across the cities, there's different neighborhoods, there's different communities, there's different factions in the neighborhood, but they all expect the same thing, to be provided a service. And when they call the police, the police show up, and they don't care what's on the side of the squad car, they just want their problem handled. So in alarm or throughout the county, I'll keep the same approach we do in the city. We'll be there, we'll listen, we'll interact, we'll hold listening sessions, town halls, which they do in the city, and make sure that the elected officials of each community have the services that they expect. When it comes to speed enforcement, reckless driving, or any targeted enforcement to reduce criminal activity, you use data-driven policing. You can buy programs and technology, you can see where the hotspots are, but you're providing a service, whether it's in rural Randall or it's in Allendale. It's all the same. People expect the same level of service, and as sheriff, you're going to get it. There will be no corner of the county left untouched, and we'll provide the service that they expect.
Thank you. Captain Gonzalez, what do you see as the most significant difference between rural policing and urban policing? And how would you ensure deputies are trained and equipped to meet the needs of rural communities?
Immediately is the geographical makeup of both sides of the county. Response times, how deputies are assigned to their patrol areas, a huge difference. Response times, even for backup. When you're assigned, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, when I stepped into the sheriff's office and I stepped into Western Kenosha County, it was quite the culture shock for me. When you're used to growing up in the city, and when you see that, when I was living in the city of Kenosha, the response times are much quicker. You have your backup there within seconds to just brief minutes. But that dynamic is significantly different once you're out in the rural regions. You have to be more cognizant of the type of interactions that you're having with the citizens on a day-to-day basis. But you also understand that there's also a different dynamic to the crime that you're seeing in the rural regions. So I think being able to continue to train our deputies, especially as we have such a younger agency right now with less experience, is continue to train them, continue to provide them resources and the equipment that they need, identify what those are, reinforce what needs to be reinforced. But I think a very important element that we sometimes miss, specifically in law enforcement, and this is something that my campaign has been touching on, is the involvement with our community leaders, communities, houses of worship, and establishments and businesses. Getting the community's perspective on what they need is going to be critical for our success. For us to just assume that a certain geographical makeup needs certain types of services without actually tapping into that community and asking them what they think they believe they need, is a critical mistake that we sometimes make in law enforcement. It can't all be data driven. It can't just say, well, property crimes are low in this area, so everything must be fine. That's not the approach to take. I think we got to continue to engage our community. I don't believe we do enough of it. And as your sheriff, that's something that I plan on focusing on and trying to be heavily involved in. Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Bell, KPD has undergone major cultural changes, increased professionalism, accountability, and training. What specific initiatives or reforms did you personally contribute to, and how would you apply those lessons to the sheriff's office?
Absolutely, thank you. After the civil unrest, morale was low and turnover was high, and we didn't have people lining up at our doors. When I took over capital administration and in charge of training, we began to recruit heavily through ads and through recruitment sessions. We were trying to get in candidates that may have not taken a police job because they took the first job out of high school. We held recruitment sessions outside of normal Monday through Friday workday hours. We held them at night and on weekends. And we continued those recruitment sessions, and now we have candidates lining up at the door. We almost made it this year without having a second recruitment. First time in many years, but we did. The recruitment's out. When you look at how we've changed, we really rebranded back under a new administration in 2023. We altered the mission statement, the vision, and the core values. And we got buy-in from the core values, changing them by asking employees, What are they looking for? And what do they think our core values will be? Once agreed upon, we put out a training session through all the shifts, through all the divisions, and we continued to get buy-in from the officers. But the real test was during applications for a specialized position, and I was conducting interviews, the officers that came in to talk about why they wanted this position and what led them there. The theme was our core values and a rebranding that worked. There was officer buy-in. In 2024, I took over the Detective Bureau, and I noticed that backlog in internet crime cases. I worked with the guy that was doing the cases and asked him, what's needed here? How can we get this backlog of 36 down? He told me people. We developed a plan to put more people in investigative positions. But outside of that, I used to sit in command staff meetings and see that just about every member of the command staff was a former member of the gang unit, except the police chief. And I asked my partners, well, what can we do to change that? And there were several answers, but what we came up with was allowing staff members that weren't drug and gun runners the ability to get investigative experience. And we did just that. We asked for those interested in the ICAC unit to put their names forward. We had 15 people volunteer or apply, and we found the two best candidates. And we put those two ladies in the unit, and they did phenomenal work. They cleared the backlog, and then they ultimately took a promotional test within that year, and they scored number 3 and 4 on the list. Now, potentially that investigative experience allowed them the ability to do well in the promotional exam, and now the detectives are going to allow 2 more individuals that opportunity. So by working together as a team, we not only increased investigative experience and got promoted, but we solved the case, the backlog, and in 2025, that unit was recognized as ICAP Unit of the Year for 2025 in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Gonzalez, what is the one outdated or ineffective practice currently used by the sheriff's offices in rural patrol, and what would you do to replace with, what would you replace with it?
This is something actually that's been introduced recently, and one of the things that, even as a deputy, I didn't feel comfortable with was seeing how spread apart some of our districts are, and the challenges that distance creates, especially when you're trying to be effective with policing, community policing, and effective, and also response times and effective in deterring some of the crimes that do occur out west. I personally would like to see the redistricting of areas to minimize and reduce those distances and those gaps. I can tell you that one of the things that would entail is also adding additional patrol units to those areas. And I think in that way, we would be able to not only provide services a little bit more efficiently, but also continue to build our presence within the community and have the community see us present and engaged more.
Great, thank you. I received a few emails on this, so, this happens to be an issue, so I'm going to start with Captain Gonzalez on this one, this legislative dollar. Speeding has become one of the top complaints countywide. What is your plan to increase traffic enforcement, reduce dangerous driving, and ensure speed limits are taken seriously again?
Yeah, speeding, oh man, we get that one quite a lot. And the interesting thing is, every now and then, you stop someone and actually file that same complaint, so. But realistically, I think there's definitely different avenues that we can take with that. One of the things that we recently got at the department was a data analysis. And I think we're able to identify some areas where not only are we getting the complaints from people and taking them into account, and also seeing where the locations are that we're able to target people that are committing infractions and addressing it in that manner. Previously, we used to have a traffic interdiction unit, that has not, it's still in place, but it's just not being utilized enough. And there's some challenges as to why that's the issue. However, I think that's something that we can bring back. We have deputies that actually enjoy traffic enforcement. They're, our chargers, they want to go out there, and traffic enforcement is like near and dear to them. But I think it's not just about stopping the individuals and citing them. I think there needs to be an educational part to that. Being engaged more, and even whether it's during interaction, during a traffic stop, or maybe even having, forums, or I think about our high school students, right, our new drivers. Why can we not target those populations, not just from a care standpoint and other safety areas, but even with traffic? I know the dynamics for new drivers is significantly different here than how I was used to it in Chicago. In Chicago, we take driver's ed in high school, and you get your permit and you start driving. But here, I think we could definitely implement some things through our school resource officers and start our young drivers at a very young age and start reinforcing some of those concerns, and also showing them what the consequences are when you don't follow some of the traffic rules that exist. So that's most of it. Thank you.
Captain Miller, to you.
I think one of the ways we can target speeders and reckless drivers by freeing up deputies on the road. There's technology out there that's available that we can work with the county board to get. And it would increase the availability of those deputies out in those patrol areas. And having responsibility for your area, gives ownership. We can use technology to pinpoint the time frame of when people are speeding. There's technology now that uses open source data from your cell phones, and you can put those patrols out during that time. Another expectation would be for deputies on the road to be in those visible areas. Now, they may not be on the radar for capturing speeders, but certainly visibility always reduces reckless behavior and criminal activity. And they don't have to be there at extensive rates, but 15 minutes here or 20 minutes there while they're writing reports or catching up on emails on those high complaint areas will reduce them. But then also capturing those speeders, holding them accountable, issuing tickets. And if it's repetitive, speeding will slow and reckless driving will slow. Think about driving from Kenosha to Milwaukee. Who speeds through Racine County? Probably not many of you, because it's the constant visibility, the constant enforcement action, and that's what we'll expect of our deputies. And the third thing is to bring back that traffic interdiction unit. We've done it in the city. We have targeted areas by our motor officers, but we can do that with squad cars and reduce speeding and reckless driving.
Thank you. I'm going to read a few questions from the audience, and this is going to be a group answer. And I think, James, you're up first. So let's start with, since Kenosha County is the third largest county in the state, as sheriff, what will you do to increase the number of minority deputies?
In 2022, when I took over as captain of administration, we did just that. We advertised in different places that we hadn't advertised before. We visited colleges. We advertised in the Blue Line down through Illinois. Visited in schools. And I was part of the community action roadmap to increase community involvement and police involvement. And that's where the community engagement team was born. The community engagement team put officers out into the community at events and assisted not in enforcement mode. We started with a 2-week program, and we allowed officers to go out with plain clothes with their duty gear and said, don't take any enforcement action, just interact with people. Third shifters didn't want to do it because the people that they had been involved with or interacted with generally aren't nice to them. But after a week of being out in the community during the time, they came back and increased mental health and wellness We held recruitment sessions in the neighborhoods, at the safety center, and at schools within the neighborhood to try and increase people from the community applying. But if people don't come to your door, there's only so much that we can do. And we'll continue to, our insurance card will hold recruitment sessions throughout the community, whether that's in rural Randall, Twin Lakes, or right here in the city. And for a time period, we did co-op recruitment sessions with other agencies within the building, and there was success because some individuals showed up that wouldn't have the experience to be police officers, but they certainly had the experience and the gumption to be dispatchers or records clerks or apply to our CSO program. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat the question? Since Kenosha County is the third largest county in the state, as sheriff, what will you do to increase the number of minority deputies?
Well, I touched on this once off the agenda, it's critical that we establish and continue to nurture relationships within the community, regardless of the geographical locations. I think we need to take an approach that's fair and consistent throughout the entire county. But also establishing relationships at a young age. I think there's nothing wrong with being engaged with children at a very young age to start establishing that trust factor. And as we continue to engage the community, we need to make sure that the things that we're doing, that first and foremost, that we are hiring people with the right character traits. Right character traits are crucial. And quite honestly, as much as we desire to have a very diverse workforce, at the end of the day, the primary factor into hiring an individual should be based on their qualifications and their character traits. As a minority, I can tell you that growing up in the city of Chicago, I had distrust for the police. And it wasn't necessarily because of the interactions, but a lot of it culturally, it's just what's ingrained and embedded into your head sometimes. But I think that as a profession, that we continue to put forth the effort to break down some of these barriers that exist, and we continue to nurture those relationships and continue to try and establish trust with folks, there's going to be a natural way of bringing in diversity into our workforces without making it strictly about color, education factors, or even social economic statuses. I think that there's not one law enforcement officer that I've ever encountered that doesn't have a desire to want to attract and engage with different communities. Unfortunately, there's just other factors that we need to address and really invest in when we're dealing with different areas of the community. But I think starting early on, establishing legitimacy, that will help us to see those numbers come to fruition.
Thank you. All right, we're going to switch to another area now, accountability, discipline, and culture. And this first question is for Captain Miller. Employees have raised concern about inconsistent discipline. What specific policies, oversight structures, or review process would you implement to ensure accountability is applied evenly across all ranks and divisions?
Thank you. Discipline is expected when employees violate policy, but making sure that discipline is consistent across all divisions and all employees is the way to bring back accountability. When leaders at the top aren't held accountable by themselves or others, that filters on down throughout the agency. I'll review policies with command staff to make sure they're in line, to make sure there's nothing about that needs to be, or nothing that needs to be changed. And we'll use those reviews among all policy from other agencies. As I did policy in the police department, I didn't just come up with a policy. I worked with other departments and got the policy and came up with the best version of it that fit our culture and our department. I'll make sure that expectations are clear and communicated by supervision, and that there are no favoritism, no cliques, and that everybody everybody's held to the same standard. And as sheriff, you'll expect me to have one set of standards, not two, and that's for everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question, this is for Captain Gonzalez. I got two questions here that people from the audience asked me to ask about, so I had to have them in my book, so here we go on the first one with Captain Gonzalez. On November 9th, 2021, you had intervened in a traffic stop where an officer had already placed one handcuff on a resisting subject and was preparing to use OC spray. Based on the reports in the video, do you believe your intervention was appropriate? And what would you do differently today, if anything?
So one of the things that I make it's always been a habit of mine, and this is something that is encouraged, regardless of what uniform you're wearing, whether it's blue, black, or brown. When you see a fellow officer that's engaged in some sort of police activity, as long as you're not being a huge impediment, you want to make sure that you're doing okay. The events of that evening on my way home was exactly that. My intention was to make sure that that officer was okay. I believe that my actions that evening, unfortunately, are overshadowed by a heavily redacted video that's being circulated online. And I think, unfortunately, that's painting a much significant narrative than what a full video would have shown. And no matter what happens going forward until the day I retire or separate from this profession, I will always make sure that any officer that's on the side of the road is okay.
Captain Bell, Charles Beal sued the city of Kenosha, and you were named as a defendant. The city ultimately settled the case, paid the plaintiff, and indicated they believed they would likely lose in court. This suggests that a decision you made may have contributed to a financial cost to the city. What can you tell voters about your role in that incident, the decisions that you made, and what you've learned from the outcome?
Yeah, I remember the incident very well. I was in the gang unit, and in the gang unit, they're expected to be out there working hard, and I was working hard. So the call came in as I was in the gang office, and my partner was in the office sitting next to me. The call came from a reliable informant who told me that a man was down the street from the police department in the 5900 block of 11th Avenue. They described the man as wearing a particular outfit which would stand out, a yellow pair of pants and a sweatshirt or vice versa. Either way, there was yellow in the outfit. And we had spoken to this informant before. I told my partner, I said, let's go. We got a call from the person that he would know by name. We got in the car and drove just a few blocks south to the area. And as we drove closer to the 5900 block, we could see the man standing on the street in front of the house that was described, wearing the same outfit that the informant had described to him. And he wasn't with anybody, he was by himself, standing on the sidewalk, looking around. And as we drove up, we got out of the car and interacted with him. We patted him down, checked him for guns and drugs, and interacted with him, asking him why somebody would call a complaint in on him. He didn't believe us, but ultimately while I was interacting with him, my partner had his keys that had a flashlight on the key ring. The flashlight didn't work, so my partner, curious, and knowing that this man was selling heroin, or he was reported to be selling heroin, opened the flashlight and dumped out what was inside. And lo and behold, there were 4 or 5 bags, individual bags of heroin. We made the arrest. We put the person in jail, and we held them on a probation hold. We forwarded that report to the district attorney's office for charges. The district attorney charged him. And it went before a judge, and ultimately a suppression hearing, when the judge suppressed the evidence saying we needed a search warrant for that flashlight. And in law enforcement, sometimes you make decisions that come back to bite you. In this case, the judge had the ability to suppress the evidence. The man sued as a violation of his rights, and the city began to fight him. But at some point, the city settled, unbeknownst to myself and my partner, and the man was making some money. But ultimately, the doors were taken off the street, and it was a safer Kenosha.
Thank you. So we're going to jump forward here to immigration, drug policy, and political identity. So this question will go to both of you. I'm going to start with Captain Gonzalez. Would you support and cooperate with the current administration's ICE agenda? And how would you balance enforcement with community trust?
I'm gonna start with something that I also want to clarify. The rumor mill is running rampant right now. I'd like to start off by saying that I will not be implementing a sanctuary city, sanctuary county, as the rumors are floating right now. Our agency has always made the effort to not only support, but when necessary, participate with any law enforcement partner. That's something that I'll continue to support as well. When it comes to the ICE situation, 287G, quite frankly, this is something that was actually advised that we should probably implement 3 years ago. That did not happen. There was a stance that was taken after the fact in September, and then even unbeknownst to the command staff, that changed again in January. So to answer that question is, we will always support and cooperate with our federal partners, our state partners, and our local partners as well. That's my stance.
Captain Bell, the same to you.
Yes, I've never wavered on this issue. When I saw the sheriff's office put out a press release that it wasn't in the best interest of the county at the time, that raised eyebrows. I had wondered why it had been put in place 3 years ago or even longer ago. When I decided I was going to run for sheriff, I made this a main point that if elected, I will immediately sign a jail incarceration model 287G. But I think most importantly, we will always stand by our law enforcement partners, and we will work with them to make sure that our community is safe. That means if for some reason Homeland Security does come here, we will stand by them and make sure protesters are held back and that they're allowed to do the job and function that they're going to do. And I'll continue that 287G for as long as it keeps the community safe, and I won't waver on that.
So I'm gonna let Beller answer this first, this next question. It's a group question. What is your position on legalization of marijuana, and how will legalization or continued prohibition affect the enforcement priorities?
When I took the oath of office as a police officer, I agreed to defend the Constitution and protect the communities and follow the laws and enforce the laws equally among all. And this is a legislative issue, it's not a law enforcement issue. We're an island state, all the states around us. You can drive 10 minutes south to Illinois and pick up marijuana and come back here and we'd be in violation of the law. If the law were to change, we would change our policies and we would enforce the law just the way it was written. If the law's not changed, we're going to continue to enforce the law. It doesn't mean we're going to target everybody, but we're going to work with the community, continue the education, because I think kids are confused, and I think parents are confused when we can, again, drive south 10 minutes and bring back illegal substances. But my main focus as sheriff is to catch those committing violent crime, and reduce crime in the city, or excuse me, in the county. Thank you.
Same question to you, Captain Gonzalez.
My stance on this is actually pretty simple. As long as there continues to be criminal organizations tied to the sale of marijuana, and it continues to be an illegal product here in this state. Until those laws change, we'll continue to enforce it.
I'm gonna let Captain Gonzalez answer this question first. Kenosha County continues to face a serious opiate and fentanyl crisis with overdoses, repeat drug-related calls, and families struggling with addictions. As sheriff, what specific strategies would you implement to reduce overdoses, disrupt drug trafficking, and support long-term recovery efforts? And how would you measure whether your approach is working?
I think some of the strategies that we have in place right now are showing a certain level of effectiveness. I think that what we need to continue doing is also continue to target this epidemic aggressively. There's unfortunately way too many negative effects that stem from these type of cases. It doesn't just impact the individual that's facing the addiction itself, but also the families, loved ones, the support services, and ultimately the entire community. And it paints the community in a bad light, so we need to continue to be aggressive in that effort, combating these issues when it comes to the opioid epidemic. I think we currently have certain programs in place that are trying to combat some of these issues. I think continuing to establish or continue lines of communications with these entities is critical, making sure that we're assessing that the programs and the steps that are in place are being effective. And also by coming back, as far as measuring the effectiveness, is also seeing what the changes have been since you start tracking some of this data and also the different programs and strategies that are set in place. I think in doing so, we're able to paint a better picture as to how effective these things are. And I think also just being open to new and different ideas, just because we have a certain system in place, that doesn't mean that system needs to remain in place for, years on end. If something new is developed, especially as technology continues to move forward, I think it's also reassessing and changing those strategies.
Thank you. Captain Miller?
Opioid epidemic affects people from all walks of the world, whether it's the inner city to the most affluent neighborhoods, and it's a problem. Back when I was a young detective, I was investigating burglaries, and it turns out the culprits were garbage kids that had scholarships for baseball. There was a kid that injured his ankle during a baseball game, and he was overprescribed opiates. He continued to do burglaries even after he was arrested and was released from custody and ended up doing an armed robbery. He didn't have the proper programs at prison to help him be recovered. He returned right back here to Kenosha County. The way we can combat this is through not only law enforcement, but social programs. In 2023, we began issuing Narcan to officers so they could respond quickly and save lives, and it's worked. In fact, multiple times a week I get an email that Narcan was used and a life was saved. But I think the biggest way to combat this is through combining our controlled substance units. We're currently operating with 2 drug units here in Kenosha County. We have KDOC operated by the Sheriff's Department, and we have SIU operated by the city. And oftentimes egos get in the way and they butt heads. Most often they're targeting the same offenders. It's inefficient and it's costly for taxpayers. There's federal funding that's now shared between both organizations, but the information isn't shared equally. I started my career here in the Sheriff's Department as an undercover drug agent. It was a combined unit of both city and county detectives, and city gang unit officers were part of that unit, and they assisted. My goal, after speaking with the police chief of the city, is to combine units, but not do it in a vacuum. Bring both agencies together, identify a clear way we're going to staff the unit, and that also means giving opportunities for deputies to be part of the unit. just like the gang officers are part of the unit. And I think bringing the units together, we'll be able to effectively target major drug dealers and take those drugs off the street, but all in all, we'll have cost savings for the entire county to be more effective. Thank you.
So this is a question on 287G. We'll let Catherine's house start. Maintaining the 287G partnership requires staffing, training, and administrative resources. Do you believe the public safety benefits justify the cost? And how would you ensure the program does not divert resources from core law enforcement duties?
Keeping the costs and the use of resources in mind, I believe that the current model that's actually in effect right now at our agency is feasible. It's something that I think allows us to maintain or offer a level of safety to the community, and also a safe exchange of those individuals that are identified to be your undocumented and committed crimes, and doing a handover to our federal partners and assisting in that process of turning over those individuals. I do believe that whenever we're putting forth the effort to get people that are committing crimes and taking them out of our community, I think there's always a benefit to that. Because we really don't know what type of crimes these folks are willing to commit. And quite honestly, when you speak to an affected member of a victim, I'm pretty sure that the costs won't matter. So I think that as stewards of our taxpayer dollar, we need to be fiscally responsible with some of these decisions that we're making, but we're also responsible to making sure that when we enter into these contracts, that when we're negotiating, for lack of a better term, with some of these federal agencies, that we're also making sure that there is a benefit to the agency itself, and that it's not creating a burden where we're not only going to be increasing our costs, but also depleting our resources. I think that's something that we really need to consider. And when we take an approach, there's a lot of things that are being evaluated. We're not just saying, well, we're not going to go with a certain model because we just don't want to, or because, we just don't believe that it's, politically a right idea or not. What we're really doing is we're making sure that we are still partnering with our federal partners and assisting them in that process, and also being mindful that we're not depleting services to our community. As a taxpayer, when you pay property taxes and you pay taxes in general for public safety, and you have a call for service when a need arises, you are expecting that officer or deputy to respond and handle that call for service. What you don't want to hear is, we're sorry, there's going to be a delay. It might take 30 minutes, it might take an hour for that officer or deputy to respond. That's not what you want to hear. You expect to be serviced and receive the proper services and attention that you deserve and that you're paid for.
Captain Roberts, any question?
This question has come up many times across the campaign trail. And it comes up from all walks of life, wondering how safe our community is going to be. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, I think we can all agree that we want safe communities. We want those that are committing crime to be incarcerated. And with an opportunity of those that are here legally, they can be removed from the country, making a safer Kenosha. In 2005, I was a young patrol officer working the streets of Kenosha, and we responded to an officer that needed assistance with an arrest. Officers were arresting a man named Ezekiel Lopez for battery domestic violence and he was resisting. When we arrived, we assisted, we took him to jail, and he was released after that. In 2007, Ezekiel Lopez was operating a car while intoxicated, and Deputy Frank Fabiano pulled him over. It ended in the murder of Deputy Frank Fabiano, and it was the same man, Ezekiel Lopez. Had he been removed from the country, Ezekiel would have been able to kill Deputy Fabiano, and they have their husband and father here. So this is very near and dear to me, and I stand strong on this issue. If we can get those that commit crime and don't belong here out of the country, we're going to do it. Again, I will not waver on this topic.
Okay, we're gonna change it up a little bit here and ask you some questions more about the sheriff's department in itself. So we'll start with Captain Gonzalez. In late 2025, a major federal human trafficking operation staged inside the public safety building, and the sheriff's office was kept completely in the dark. What does this say about the current administration's relationship with federal partners, and how would you repair that trust?
I think the approach to this is the approach to the relationships at any other level. The nurturing of a relationship is just as important internally as well as externally with our law enforcement partners. One of the things that I intend to do is to continue, and I feel that I actually already have a pretty good relationship with a lot of our surrounding agencies, but specifically when it comes to higher level agencies like at the state or federal, continuing to be engaged, continuing to be one that's nurturing that relationship so that there's not just trust established, but communication lines that are far more clear, so that situations like this don't need to arise. Unfortunately, I don't have all the information on this specific incident, so I can't really more to that. But I think that's just a reflection of the leadership at the very top. When you are at the helm, you're entrusted with a lot of different things, and a lot of that trust includes being a present leader, not just for your agency, but for everybody else that's a partner. There is a force multiplier that can take effect when you have a unified front as a law enforcement profession, regardless of what level you're at, whether it's at a local level, state level, or federal level. There's something to be said about that. And I know I use the term legitimacy a lot, but when you come off as a unified front, your community begins to trust you. When that trust begins to develop, you become a legitimate entity. And it's through that legitimacy that people will come forward and help you. It's through that legitimacy that the communities will speak up when something bad's happening. That it's not always a reactive response, and hopefully a proactive approach to other issues that we attack. Thank you.
And Captain Butler, how do you feel about the same question?
You want me to answer?
Yes, please.
The relationships that the police department has with federal law enforcement agencies is extensive. And I plan to bring that relationship building over to the sheriff's office. In 2025, we increased our ATF TFOs from 1 to 5. Excuse me, 1 to 4. It was supposed to be 1 to 3, but the relationship that we built with Craig Freeze, the ATF supervisor, he allowed us to add 1 more. We now have a very strong front in investigating gun crimes and the ability to capture and go straw purchases. We have the access to the knifing machine up in Racine County, which we can quickly take our guns that we recover and see if they've been involved in other crimes through technology. But building relationships just doesn't stop at federal law enforcement. It's throughout the entire county. And at this point, I don't believe the relationships are as strong as they could be with other departments and agencies in the community. In 2024, I attended the FBI National Academy, and that was a prestigious assignment, a prestigious selection, and that was built through relationships that our department has with the FBI. While attending the National Academy, I worked with 250 other law enforcement leaders from across the world. And those relationships that I built there have proved dividends. We had an overdose death with 2 deceased persons, and the suspect flew to California. We couldn't track down the person, and I picked up the phone and called the guy that I was with in the National Academy. His name's Eric, and I said, Eric, I need help. I need to be able to locate this lady who will be charged with 2 counts of reckless homicide. But my detectives need to interview her before we can issue the charges. And he said, no problem. And he put my detectives in touch with homicide detectives. And a few weeks later, we were in California making the arrest. Here in the sheriff's office, I plan to immediately rebuild relationships that I've lost. The sheriff's office should have never not known about an operation that's happening in the community. It's just plain and simple. Relationships get the job done, and that's what we're moving forward if elected.
So I received a couple of questions from the public and a question about budgets. So we'll start with Captain Gonzalez. I'm going to read my question and also the audience question. Audience question is, over the past years, the Sheriff's Department has run a negative $4 million budget deficit. How do you plan to address this issue and not have a negative budget with impacts to Kenosha County residents? And to build off of that, public safety now consumes 50% of the local tax money. What specific inefficiencies, duplications, or out-of-date practices would you eliminate to protect taxpayers' money and try to bring this $4 million negative budget in line, or deficit in line? This is an audience, I am not verifying that it is $4 million, but somebody in the audience has. $4 million budget deficit.
I think like anything else, fiscal responsibility is a crucial component of our agency, and making sure that as the sheriff, we're being and leaders in government, that we're being good stewards of our taxpayer money. As far as, I'll preface it with this too, I have an issue when agencies look at law enforcement as a revenue generating source. That is not what we are, and is not what we should be about. And I'll tell you, sometimes there's political pressure that you can see coming from above that pushes that agenda, and I don't believe in that. I think once you start looking at a law enforcement agency to be a revenue generating source, you start losing focus on what our mission is there for. 56% of the tax budget, yes, that's a big number. One of the things that I've been pretty vocal about is that we currently have duplication of services, and I don't know why that's I can speculate on it. It's a big price tag. But duplication of services when you're running 2 jail facilities is quite a heavy financial burden on a county. Ideally, what I'd like to see is the expansion of the Kenosha County Detention Center, and starting to see the transfer of a lot of the operations that are taking place downtown over to the KCDC. That facility is already designed for expansion. It was built that way and designed. Additionally, you have to think about the infrastructure costs that go into running 2 facilities. Outdated infrastructure that needs to be replaced, and quite honestly, it's sometimes challenging to find businesses or agencies that are able to come in and rectify some of the issues that we face with the infrastructure. Another very, very, very heavy price tag that people need to start paying attention to is medical costs. When we are duplicating services, it's not just running 2 facilities, it's running duplicative medical services, kitchen services, and everything else that goes with running a facility. So that's something that needs to change. I know that it's not an easy lift, it's a very expensive lift to take on. However, we need to look at what the return on investment is long term. When you're continuing to operate in this manner, you're doing the taxpayer a huge disservice. We need to make sure that we can start eliminating some of these issues. And it also has an impact on staffing. When we take the totality of everything that's going into running two facilities, you're gonna see that investment upfront is sometimes a wise decision. So that's one of the things that I'll continue to push for. I can't promise that it's gonna change, because it takes more than one individual to push for that, right? It truly is government as a whole, being on the same page and seeing the same issues that we're all seeing. And I know it's no secret, I know it's a known issue, but at some point, someone has to take that responsibility on and put it at the forefront of a lot of the other issues that are out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Ballard, same question.
I find it interesting that this question came up. I was at a county board meeting just a month ago when a retired county board supervisor came up to me and said, "You're running for sheriff, how are you going to fix the jail time, overtime, overage? It's $4.5 million over." So I want to be sitting here asking this question. But I think it boils down to staffing, right? There's a lot of overtime, a lot of turnover in the jail. And it goes back to listening to your people, determining a solution, working with those that are most effective, and implementing that solution. Hopefully we can reduce the time that way. The next thing is, as captain of administration, I found ways to pay for things that we didn't have the budget for. You look for outside funding sources, you create community partnerships, and you find a way to pay for things. We had a high number of pursuits in the 2021 and 22, and we didn't have the budget for stop sticks. I was able to work with a local car dealership and fund stop sticks for the police department. In that position, I did grant writing. We needed more body cameras. We looked for outside source funding, found a grant from the state, and secured a $70,000 or $80,000 grant for body cameras to get body cameras for every staff member. But I think it often takes somebody coming from the outside to look at all processes. Because when you're in the position for years, things that are abnormal look normal. And you might be unwilling to make a suggestion for a change, especially if you have a leader that doesn't listen. So if you have a leader that listens and can look at what we're working with and maybe reduce services, or maybe we can find a better way to pay for it. Just recently, as detective captain, I learned that there's a program to track lawn transactions that's free with our $300 membership to Mosin. We're paying $14,000 to the city for that program. That money will now be used for other programs. But sometimes law enforcement is expensive. We all want safe communities. We all want to be protected in our homes. And sometimes we have to pay for it. So the way to reduce overages, overtime, is really just to listen and evaluate and come up with a solution that's going to work. And maybe that solution doesn't work, but at least we try. Thank you.
Captain Dallas, if you'd like to respond, I guess there was a difference regarding your department, or you're okay with it?
I think the only thing that I'll respond to that is that the overtime factor is one of significance. Right? But like I stated right here, duplicating not just services and staffing levels. I think through attrition, you would be able to reduce the staffing levels and bring that to a more realistic number that would impact the budget. But you can't fund everything via grants. Grants aren't always necessarily sustainable long term. And sometimes the other issue is you have to analyze some of these grants because it looks very appetizing in the beginning. And then you look into the work that's required and some of the requirements that are mandated by those grants. And quite honestly, there's actually no benefit to it, or very minimal benefit to it. So to fund things, it just do so via grant funding. I don't believe that's always necessarily the right approach to help eliminate some of these costs. I think the state that we're in right now, and he's right now, acknowledge the fact that technology does cost money. And as we want to implement some of these technologies to help public safety, it is going to cost money. But again, I think it's, the duplication of services is truly what's hurting us, in a much greater scale than just the overtime. When I have a dorm at the detention center, it doesn't matter if I have 5 inmates or if I have 70 inmates. That dorm must be staffed, period. So, if you think about it from a staffing perspective, you have to do so anyway. So it's just, again, just being aware of the operational aspects of our facilities, and it'll give you a much better, clearer picture on what some of these challenges are. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're just about going to wrap it up here, but Kevin has got some questions from some of the cadets that he'd like to offer, and we'll turn the mic over to him for a few minutes here.
So real quick, I forgot to send these to Brian, but the cadets, round of applause to the youth who want to be police officers. We're going to them. So we're watching now live, so hey guys. They have just a couple questions for you guys that need to be fun. Question number 1, we'll have Captain Doug go first. How will the sheriff's office utilize technology such as drones and artificial intelligence to be the sheriff?
Oh, that's a good question.
We have to embrace technology. The city signed a $12 million contract with Axon, and you're about to see drones fly over the city from 3 different fire departments. The drones will get there long before police do, and they'll be able to evaluate what's happening. The drones will be flown by police officers who will relay the information to responding units. Now, being more rural in the county, there's not an incentive use for drones, but they can still be stationed in communities across the county. Right now, the county is using drones to find missing people, the same as the city. And I think as technology gets better, we'll continue to embrace that technology. But I think the main thing we need to be concerned about is oversight and protecting constitutional rights when we're using technology. There must be strict adherence to rules and policy. Strict adherence to rules and policy, and making sure that it's being used correctly. That would include license plate cameras and the crime fighting that has. I ran a project to install flock cameras across the city, and those cameras solved crime well after the crime occurred. We were solving burglaries by just seeing surveillance video of vehicles committing those burglaries, and then matching those pictures with flock technology. Right down before we installed downtown, we had a burglary, and we found the suspect within 24 hours, and it was an exciting time because downtown business district had just donated enough money for 4 cameras to be installed, so they were able to see how it works. We will embrace all technology, including any AI-driven products and tech, but we'll make sure that it's used appropriately, but it'll be more efficient than what we're doing now. Thank you.
You have a question? You have a question?
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna agree that the technology that exists out there is quite, it's mind-blowing. It's also scary. I think one of the things that we're learning right now too is, as it seems like law enforcement is always trying to play catch up with some of these elements with technology and laws and everything else. Protecting civil liberties, I think, will be crucial. As great as these tools are, we're learning quickly that if there's not enough oversight in place, that you're going to run into issues and potentially liability issues that are going to cost the taxpayer a lot of money in litigation. I think the accountability factor has to be upped as far as making sure that the people that we're entrusting to use these technologies are doing so in a responsible manner, making sure they're not overstepping their boundaries and violating people's constitutional rights. I love hearing about crimes being solved and issues being resolved and us catching the bad guys when you're doing things we're able to do so because of the technologies that exist in place. But it's a fine line that you have to go very carefully, and I think as leaders in law enforcement agencies, we need to make sure that we're reinforcing the fact that it's a very heavy responsibility that everybody is responsible for. It's leadership at the top, down to the officer, deputy, brand new on the job. You just can't stress that enough. And I think as long as there's oversight in place that can help us, keep us in check, I think there's ways to make sure that we're still capitalizing on a lot of this technology that exists to help us do our jobs and do so responsibly.
Captain Gonzalez, if you can give us cadets one piece of advice as we consider a career in law enforcement, what would it be?
Great question. That's a great question. I can tell you, as I hear about this question, it's already something that I've started thinking about as we are dealing with some of these recruiting issues and strategies. And it's not just in law enforcement. I think this is something that's applicable across various different professions. Especially when you're looking at entering something long-term. It's very important that you do your research into the agency that you're looking into. It's really a type of courtship that's taking place. As a law enforcement agency, we're doing everything in our power, everything possible to make sure that we are recruiting and selecting the right candidates for our agency. But as a candidate, you need to make sure that you're doing the same as well. Cultures vary greatly from agency to agency. The Kenosha Police Department is literally feet away from us. We share the same building, yet our cultures are very different. Our missions, to a degree, are different. As a sheriff's office, constitutionally, our main responsibility are the jails, courthouse security, prisoner inmates, and then patrol. When we were facing a staffing shortage not that long ago of nearly 29 correctional officers, deputies were on the brink of coming off the road and helping to staff that jail. As a cadet, as someone that's seeking a career in law enforcement, you have to make sure that you're informing yourself and educating yourself on what the missions for these agencies are. What's their vision? What are their values? What are the things that are mutual to what you believe in and desire to do? I think that's probably one of the greatest kickbacks that I've taken even throughout my last 18 years in law enforcement is seeing what would I have done differently. And I think that's one of the things I would look into more. You have to understand as well that the generations that are coming into the workforce are different. For those that came out of the Great Depression era, the generations, those generations historically are very committed to a single agency or a single employer, right? They almost live to work. But there's changes now. And today's generations work to live. So there's a significant difference. And so I think as you take that into account, as you start thinking about what you're about to embark into the next 20, 30 years of your working career in life, that's something that I will definitely look into. Make sure that it's a good fit, not just for the agency, but for yourself as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Great question for the cadets. One that's near and dear today. As a young teenager growing up in Paddock Lake, I came home from school one day, and there was a letter for me. And it was from Kenosha Sheriff Explorer Post 486. And they were looking for explorers to join the post, those that were interested in law enforcement. And I suppose somewhere along the way I checked that I was interested in law enforcement in school, because I don't know how that letter arrived. And when I arrived in the first meeting, I met Harvey Head, retired lieutenant now, and Bruce Flauer. And both those men were mentors to me because I didn't have a father figure in the home. My grandfather was a So I came up through the ranks in Explorers and gained responsibility that ultimately shaped my idea of what law enforcement was and going on ride along with deputies as a young teenager. The advice I give them is to explore all possibilities, to make sure that you involve yourself in that role, whether that's in the city or the county, because there's a program in the city run by some police officers that is very, very successful. But then I would suggest to them that get your college degree before you join law enforcement. In Kenosha, you're allowed 5 years in the city to get your degree, and I've seen people do it, and I've seen those that can't do it, they can't get the classes done within those 5 years. They did leave other agencies, but still it becomes stressful and burdensome. So get that degree, but while you're doing that, start building those relationships with your instructors at college, your instructors in the academy, and neighborhood, those in the neighborhood, because there's going to be background checks, and they're going to come and knock on your door, and they're going to talk to your neighbors to see what kind of kid you are. I think ultimately, the best thing that they can also do is not only explore local law enforcement, but explore federal law enforcement. By the time the National Academy put me in touch with young FBI agents, I didn't know that you had to have solid 3 years of work experience before you could apply to the FBI. I was suggesting look at that federal law enforcement. It's a different kind of work, but it's also very fulfilling. And a lot of the agents that I met started out as FBI data analysts, and ultimately enjoyed the work and moved on as agents. But I think the most important thing is build relationships while you can, and your first day on the job as a police officer is to put your hand out, greet everybody that you can, shake their hand, and tell them who you are. In the city, it's come a long way, and we operate now as a family with a robust peer support program that values mental health and looks out for one another. And I would say use that service the best that you can and as much as you can. Because law enforcement is a calling, it's a job, but it's not your entire life. Make sure you're with your family and you go home each night and hug those that love you. Thank you.
All right, so now we're gonna close things up, and I'm gonna give you guys like 60 seconds just to kind of decompress a little bit here. And Captain Gonzalez, I'm gonna give you a choice, you're gonna go first or second, it's up to you, because Captain Bell went first in the opening. So come back in about 60 seconds, you let me know if you wanna go first, or Captain Bell first is fine, and we'll go from there. All right, thanks. Don't break.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, probably. So the captain is up, whatever you're ready is fine with me.
All right. So once again, I want to say thank you very much for being here today. The amount of support is tremendous. I can't thank you all enough. I want to say that I'm here today before you, and what I want to communicate to you is that I don't have the answers to everything. I don't want to come off as being the one that knows everything. I can tell you that I'm here today, and I want to be very frank with you. I've been asked to run for sheriff before, and I said no. It requires a lot of commitment. It requires exposing yourself out there, putting yourself out there, where, believe it or not, most people can talk the talk, but can't walk it. I'm here today because I actually wrestled with that decision. My pastor who was here in the audience today gave a preaching on Jonah one day. And I've been praying about this. And I was like, oh man, my Jonah running from Nineveh? Quite frankly, yeah, the answer was yes. And I'm out here today because I can tell you one thing for sure that I can guarantee you. And I already told you that I don't have the answers to everything. But one of the things I am a committed individual. For the last 18 years, I haven't really done anything super special or mind-blowing at the agency. What I've done is, I've treated everybody with respect. I've expressed my careness for them. I sometimes go out of the way to tell people that I love them, and there's a reason for that. And it's not to be weird. It's because I genuinely do. I care about every individual at our agency and even our surrounding agencies. I can tell you that one of the biggest things that I wrestle with at night, especially being at the level that I am today, is am I making a difference? Am I doing enough? I'm actually, my heart is critical. And I can tell you that I've been confirmed in 2 occasions that I am. When I was leaving the detention center and I was being promoted to captain, I had 4 of the biggest dudes come into my office and duct tape me to my office, and they said, LT, you're not leaving us. That was my first response. That was my first confirmation that I am. The second one has been happening the last couple of weeks. I'm not going out there, as much as I'm knocking on doors and talking to people, I'm not going out there within the agency saying, hey guys, I'll pitch you a deal, endorse me or do this. I'm not doing any of that. And to see the response, the overwhelming response of support internally from every single level, it says a lot. It tells me that I'm doing the right thing. And I might not win this election, and that's okay, because I already won. And sometimes people don't understand that. They're like, what do you mean by you already won? I've already won, regardless of the outcome. So I have earned everybody's respect at the agency, and even surrounding agencies, maybe which won't come out publicly to express that. That's all I need. I don't need an award. I don't need a declaration from, the mayor or a key to the city. I don't need a plaque. I don't need any of it. Having earned people's respect is tremendous for me. And, I want to thank everyone that supported me. And Jim, publicly, I want to thank you for so far running the clean campaign. I've expressed this to him on many occasions. You and I are different. You and I can achieve what we're aiming to achieve without slander, without dirty politics. And I believe that will set us apart tremendously. I have a lot of respect for him. He is a very highly qualified individual. I'll state this today, and so am I. Yes, there's differences. I have the internal insight that maybe he doesn't. But Jim is also a very good individual. To the voter, I'll say it again, inform yourself. Don't just follow the letter. Don't just follow public opinion. Do your own research. What matters to you? And are we the candidate that you want to choose? Please do so. And realistically, it doesn't mean anything if on August 11th you don't go out to vote. This is a very important race. I can tell you that as an agency, we are not going to be satisfied with the status quo for another 4 years. And the fact that from the number 2 person in the chain of command, all the way down to the deputy correctional officer or support staff member with less than a month on a job isn't a clear enough message, then I don't know what else will be. To the community, my effort will be to earn your trust. My effort that I promise you is that I want to continue to grow and nurture relationships. This campaign trail has been phenomenal, it's exposed me to so many people that I would have never, ever met. So many people that have shown their support, so many people that have prayed over it, so many people that are contributing financially, and it's taking me out of my comfort zone. I don't like asking people for money. I don't like that. I don't know what the people's financial circumstances are, but yet people give. I don't like asking people, hey, can you help me do this or that, the other. I don't like being, the inconvenience of folks. But I'll tell you this, no matter what happens, I've already won. And I hope, and more than anything, that I give my King of glory into what I'm doing. Thank you very much. God bless you guys. God bless you.
Good job, Tony. First of all, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your night to be here. I want to thank Stella for hosting, the moderator for moderating, Kenosha County High for hosting, but most of all, my family that's here with me and my closest supporters. Tonight you've heard a lot about experience, but it's what you do with that experience that really sets you apart. I've been a police officer, law enforcement, public safety in this community for almost 30 years. I love this community. I love Kenosha County, and I'm here to serve. Running for sheriff is uncomfortable. Tony said himself, uncomfortable with it. When I agreed to do this, when after talking to everybody, I was willing to get uncomfortable. I have a great job in the city. I run the detective bureau. I have great employees. I have a desk job. But it's just not enough for me. It's a call to service. And before I ran, I was pretty sure that nobody else was going to run except the city sheriff. And Tony's a formidable opponent. One of us should win this race and move the sheriff's department into a direction that brings trust from not only within, but from the community. We're going to do great things. God spent a career building things, leading people, ups and downs, civil unrest, but it all boils down to taking care of people, giving them organizational growth, giving them opportunity, but making sure that by doing that, you're providing a service to the community. My goal is to earn the trust of the sheriff's office. I know I'm the outsider, but I come in with fresh eyes to oversee what's happening, not bound by any political ties, no relationships, no favoritism. I stood before the Deputy Sheriff's Association, and I was told by many that I would not receive the endorsement. It was uncomfortable, but I chose to do it so they could hear who they might have to work with if I'm elected sheriff. I heard things like sinking ship, SWAT cars that hadn't been equipped for years or for a year, and driving equipment that was just unsuitable. That's a leadership problem from the top. And it starts with, again, fresh eyes, somebody that can come in and provide clear expectations. So I'm looking forward to your support on August 11th. Again, my name is James Bell, and I appreciate all of you.
So, I would like to thank both of the candidates who showed up and answered some tough questions. I think both of you did a fantastic job. I do have one final thought, and it's, accountability works when leaders show up. You can't even show up tonight. You want it down. Good evening.
Thank you, brother.
I just want to get a pretend picture.
Oh, sure.
This was fantastic.
Thank you.